saying we need to have a space in this country where people can express dissent. That's what the Occupy movement has been about. And I think we can learn from right here in Seattle, which was really, I think, the birthplace of the Occupy movement when you go back to 1999 and the Battle of Seattle. Taking on these corporate powers, it was incredible to be there. It was the first time Democracy Now! Was doing radio and television. It was back in 1999 for this incredible week. You know, we came in force to Seattle because we saw how all the movements were converging at this remarkable moment at the end of November in 1999. And I co-host Democracy Now! With Juan Gonzalez, a great reporter, who also writes columns. And I hope you've all read his book, News for All the People, The Epic Story of Race in the American Media. He wrote it with Joe Torres. But Juan writes for the New York Daily News, the largest New York paper. And he's a columnist, and he has for many, many years. Now, when Democracy Now! Headed to Seattle in 1999, we said to Juan, will you come? And he said, okay, let me ask my editors at the Daily News. And he said to them, he wanted to cover this movement that was going to take place, this protest against the WTO. And they said, the who? And they said, the WTO. And they said, how does that affect us in New York? We absolutely said no reason why you should be able to go there. So that was the giant. Democracy Now! Was the ant, but we brought Juan with us. And though the Daily News didn't want him to go. And so he came to Seattle, and to say the least, all hell broke loose, or you might say all heaven broke loose. But suddenly, Juan is getting calls from the Daily News to do daily updates and hourly updates, and that they could say they had their man from the on the scene. But this incredible movement here in Seattle, of thousands of people, high school kids, environmentalists, unionists, doctors, nurses, farmers from all over the world, recognizing what it meant to have unbridled corporate power determining, even overturning the rules of states and countries, recognizing the danger of this unbridled corporate power. This began back in 1999, and it's also really instructive to see the tremendous police repression that everyone was faced with. The tear gas, the rubber bullets that were being denied by the city authorities here, and so CNN was simply parroting that line where Indian media was getting more hits on their website, telling the truth, showing the pictures, the handfuls of the rubber bullets that were being held. They were getting more hits than CNN on their website, and Indian media was really born here. And then you have, Norm Stamper, who was forced to step down, who feels that what he did here was his greatest mistake. And he has become an eloquent spokesperson now. The police chief of Seattle, the former police chief who presided over this, one who knows, against the militarization of police in this country. Several times, and we most recently had him on when we had a spokesperson for the Police Foundation who had coordinated a call between police chiefs around the country on how to basically stamp out Occupy, how to deal with the Occupy movement, how to shut it down. And when the guest came on with Norm Stamper, he said, Norm, we want to congratulate you. First of all, he came on because Chief Stamper was going to be on. And he said, we want to congratulate you. You're really the model of how we see we should deal with these encampments around the country. And Norm was saying, no, I do not want to be the model. I should be the model for the opposite because I think what we did was wrong. And how significant this is, and this profound point he made, beyond the using of the rubber bullets and the tear gas, when you have this militarized force and their riot gear with their shields, the police set up a wall between them and these peaceful protesters that is very frightening what happens when you create such a gulf when you don't see people anymore as your neighbors, as your kids, as your friends, as your kids' friends, that suddenly you see them as the enemy. I have this theory that, I mean, you know, the Pax Comitatus Act in the United States, which says that the military can't walk through the streets of the United States, that the way we are getting around this is by the militarization of the police. And this is an enormous problem when they are getting more than $1 billion and they are getting tanks and drones, the police departments of this country. I mean, we dealt with a level of this at the Republican and Democratic conventions. And I think this is important even in having a discussion about health care, because health care is a part of this movement of resistance in this country that is having an expression like we have never seen. And who knows what will happen in the spring. Movements don't usually begin in the fall. This one did, and then it met the coldness of winter and the militarization of the police. But there is a spring to come, and it is converging on... an election year when all people are particularly attuned to politics. This is a moment when politicians listen. They have to. I mean, yes, they need money, and they take a lot of it, but they also, in the end, need votes. And so there is this moment when your demands truly do make a difference. Don't forget that President Obama was a community organizer, right? Okay, the community organizer-in-chief became the commander-in-chief. And the question is now, how do you community organize? And what happens when the person that possibly many of you voted for, you disagree with? How do you express your point of view, especially at a time when you see, I mean, I think this is what happened in 2008. All movements converged. I think the main difference between Obama and Clinton in the Democratic primary was simply that he had been against the war in Iraq. That was the main difference between the two. And she refused until the end, until it was too late, to say she made a mistake in supporting the war in Iraq. And so here was President Obama swept in by the anti-war movement as well as a number of other movements. With people having tremendous expectations of him. I think the day he was elected, the world heaved a sigh of relief, right? I mean, so many people felt they had been hitting their heads against a brick wall, and suddenly that wall became a door. But the question is, would it be kicked open, or would it be slammed shut? Right? When he is in the Oval Office, and those who are used to having the ear of the most powerful person on earth whisper in his ear, if he can't point out the window of the Oval Office and say, if I do that, they will storm the Bastille, if he doesn't see anyone out there, he is in big trouble. And that's when he agrees with you. And what about when you disagree with him? Well, there's no more important time to express those views than that. The great Harry Belafonte, whose life is the story of resistance in the 20th century, the great artist, singer, actor, and activist, you know, part of all the great movements of the 20th century, and particularly the civil rights